It's the final countdown to the start of the 2025 Fantasy Major League Rugby season. On this episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show, we get you all set up in full swing with a waiver wire breakdown, a look at the opening matches, and much more. We get you all set up again for the start of Fantasy MLR. We couldn't be more excited. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 141 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. With you this evening, as we record this podcast, Matt Yee, Ryan Yee, Vandy, who's typically here with us, he had to go into hiding a little bit. Obviously, for those of you who know, he does have a very soft spot for some team that did not look so good over the weekend. I know this is a rugby
actually.
podcast. I know this is a rugby podcast, but we are all about fantasy sports as a whole. It's what got us into this. And obviously for Vandy, it started off with fantasy football, which is where he found his love for the Kansas City Chiefs. And we'll just leave it at that. He needs to take some time to
no more
regather.
salt in the wound, Ryan. All right, he's got to watch Utah all season.
Well, to get you back on track, to get Vandy back on track and all of our listeners back on track, I said it at the top of the show. It's the final countdown to the beginning of the Major League Rugby 2025 season. We are finally here. We are in the opening week. Matches are this Saturday. We couldn't be more excited. Maddie, we're going to break it all down this episode, but how excited are you for the start of the season? It feels like it crept up, but it's finally here.
Yeah, it's this past offseason has flown by, nothing but action. And I'm looking forward to it, Ryan. I think this is going to be a good one. I think this is going to be one of those good years.
Yeah, we spent all these past offseason episodes kind of building up to this point, talking about obviously last season and the rankings then, talking about what to look out for the upcoming season. We've gone through our rankings. We've gone through our mock drafts. It is finally here to start actually doing what we do here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show, and that's help you win a fantasy MLR championship. So that starts this week. We got a full episode here in this one. Of course, we're going to have our news dump to go over all the latest news from around the league. We got a league update from yours truly, Supreme Commissioner. And of course, it's the beginning of our regular segments. We got our waiver wire breakdown, our Rucking rundown to go over all of the matches that are happening this weekend. And of course, we'll wrap it up at the end with our TFR Betting challenge. So we got a jam-packed show here. Going to be a lot of exciting, good stuff. Maddie, how do you feel about the squad that we drafted? I want to give a shout out to everyone who tuned in to the live stream draft that we had last week, and it was a lot of fun. We cranked out a bunch of rounds with some new members as well. Had Great American Rugby's Lance Kavanaugh on to kick it off for us with the first overall pick, who brought the energy, and then we had a whole slew of picks that came through from all of our old members as well. We drafted ourselves, I think, a pretty good squad that we feel pretty decent about. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel pretty confident in it. I think we have a good balance of players. It was three minds just coming together to draft a winning squad, I think.
Yeah. We've mentioned on the show it was the final forming of the Power Rangers that came together for the final form. I'm of course the head, right? Maddie,
No.
you're maybe
The
a loose end part. Don't say it.
Massive
Don't
loose end.
don't stop it.
Me and
Either
Vandy
way,
down there steering ship.
exactly. But it was a lot of fun. Again, that's going to be a whole lot of exciting action each and every week in our main TFR league. Again, that includes Great American Rugby, like we mentioned. It also now has Gift a Bailu, who I now can pronounce his name right, who has made appearances on the Rugby Odd Show, and a bunch of other stuff. Gift Time Rugby, creating content there, and of course our regulars when it comes to Rugby Mornings. John Fitzpatrick, Eagles Overseas is Bill Baker. Rugby wrap ups, Matt McCarthy. It has everyone in there. And it's a whole lot of fun. We're going to be having a good time too, especially with all the other league members as well who are trying out Fantasy MLR for the first time or coming back for their second season. Matt, we have a listener league as well, where we are taking all the champions from the past year and putting them in a league with us, yours truly, Matt, myself, Vandy, to see if they can take down the show host themselves. How do you feel about that squad? I feel pretty good. It is funny though that your squad looks very, very similar to the one we drafted
Well, now we know
on
who the
our
now we know who's got
right,
the who's the actual head.
right,
Um,
right.
yeah, no, I'm happy with that one too. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be nice having kind of two chances at the bits. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, let's get into it here. No more time to waste. But before we do, if you aren't already, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers. Got a whole bunch of fun content that will be coming out weekly when it comes to all things fantasy MLR. Again, we talked about it. We're going to have a waiver wire breakdown that will be released, and we have our starts of the week. We have our TFR betting challenge picks that come out, and so much more. Our weekly challenge that we'll get into here in our league update as well. You'll find all of those on our social media channels for a quick breakdown, a quick recap of what we talked about on this show. You can also give us a follow there on our handles that you'll find up above on the YouTube video, down below in the description. And hey, leave us a like, subscribe here to the YouTube channel.
Yep.
We're up to 105 subscribers, Maddie. So love to see the
Wow.
growth here, which is a lot of fun. Let's get that number even higher as we continue to trudge on this 2025 MLR season. We appreciate it. The support is awesome. We'd love to see the feedback that we've been getting on our Discord channel that you can also join. The link down below to do that. Fun community there. That's where we host all of our communication for our fantasy leagues, as well as different channels to talk all things MLR and all things rugby, because we are in the thick of a whole bunch of different rugby leagues that we'll be getting into. And if you haven't already, the website is finally updated. We'll get into it more in our league update, but the fantasyruckers.com, the official platform for fantasy MLR here on the Fantasy Ruckers show. A whole bunch of fun stats there. The season has started. That's where you'll be playing fantasy MLR. You want to check that out to get yourself familiarized with that. All right, you ready to talk about the latest from around the league?
Let's do it.
News dump.
All right, it is time for our TFR news dump, where we talk about the latest things from around the league. And we have some exciting announcements, Maddie, when it comes to some growth, some signs of growth here in Major League Rugby. And we've talked about it here on the show before, where the sign of a new sports league, where it's really starting to take grasp and grow and make a established, an established name for itself within the North American sports space, is the announcement of a legitimate broadcasting partnership. And that's exactly what happened over the course of the past week. Major League Rugby announcing that it has agreed to a new multi-year broadcasting deal with ESPN, which is very, very exciting. ESPN, obviously, one of the marquee sports broadcasting brands out there. A lot of people call it and refer to it as the mothership of sports television. And it looks like Major League Rugby is joining the ESPN crew. Games will be streamed on ESPN Plus in the United States, as well as select games on ESPN2. Thoughts on this overall, Maddie, the partnership between MLR and ESPN? Obviously, if you're in the United States, this is where you're going to be getting it from. From what I understand, people who are international will still be able to tune into the Rugby Network to maybe catch some of these games, and also, following a 72-hour delay, the highlights, the replays of each match, and other rugby content will be available on the Rugby Network as well. But for most part, for all of our United States viewers, ESPN is going to be the way to go when it comes to MLR this season.
Yeah, it's no, it's good. I was a bit worried when, we weren't too sure with what the future was there. But now that we've gotten this solidified for multi-years, it seems that there's at least outsider, it just talks about the worth of the league and kind of looks at where we're going to go, because really the league's only going to go as far as its broadcasting partners. So yeah, it's good to hear. I'm looking forward to it as an ESPN Plus holder. I'm looking forward to it as somebody who didn't previously have ESPN Plus and now has to wait 72 hours to get the replays. I don't know how happy I am about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think that's the big conversation that I've been seeing on socials, Maddie, is just that you're putting, obviously, ESPN Plus is a subscription platform, right? So,
Yep.
for a lack of better terms, you're putting MLR games behind a paywall, which again, I guess, limits the access to who can watch Major League Rugby. Obviously, when it was on TRN, free for everyone to watch. However, you still need to register and go on and sign up for TRN. So it's not like it
Yep.
was just automatically there for you either. But I will say the one exception and the reason why I don't take as big issue with that and the idea of it being behind a paywall is what you just kind of alluded to there, Maddie, is the fact that most people do already have ESPN Plus. And there are going to be people there that will be surfing through and scrolling through the ESPN Plus app and will come across MLR and may tune in. You see a whole bunch. I mean, when
Yep.
I'm on ESPN Plus, you always see a whole bunch of obscure sports on there sometimes. And if you don't have anything better to do, you might tune in and watch it. And again, I think the exception is the fact that it is ESPN. It already has a huge, large usership when it comes to ESPN Plus. I think the hit of it being behind a paywall may not be as big as what it may seem on the surface, but I do agree with you there. It is going to be interesting. Nonetheless, though, again, always cool to see a big name kind of stepping in as the broadcasting
Yep.
partner. Seeing that ESPN brand on it should be cool this season.
Yep. For sure.
All right, let's move on to some other news. I want to get your reaction to this, Maddie, because it was announced, interestingly, not too far advance of the season, but it does sound like that the MLR will be incorporating new laws for the upcoming 2025 year. Four new laws, and largely you can really put it into a big basket of a lot of them just eliminating the number of scrums that
Yeah.
you're going to be having in these games. Now, if you're a guy that's or a lady or a rugby fan that likes to watch those scrums and is part of that tight five and is appreciative of the art of the scrum, these rules may not be something that really sticks with you. But nonetheless, it is something that we are having. I think Brian Ray kind of put it well, where if you're playing in the MLR and you're a tight five player, you may not be liking this, especially how you're going to develop, your scrum skills when you're not seeing that as much in competition play. But just to go quickly over the four new laws, Maddie, before you react to it, the first one is the removal of the scrum option on a knock forward or forward pass into touch. It will only be a line out, which is kind of confusing in a way. It's kind of like an exception to the rule, which is kind of weird. A knock on or throw forward into goal and grounded by either team is now a goal line dropout and not a scrum. The third one is a failure to play the ball after 5 seconds of the use it rule, which is something that also has been implemented recently, is now a free kick, a sanctioned free kick. So I believe that's a bent arm free kick, not a scrum. And then the
Yep.
lastly, a unsuccessful end to a maul is now also a sanctioned free kick and not a scrum. So again, four laws that really just eliminate scrummaging from more of the game. Probably the idea to speed up the game in ways, but I don't know how necessarily I feel about this.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's the development side where Brian Ray hit on. I think the main thing is that like people are still coming here to watch rugby. If you change the game too much, it's not going to look like rugby union anymore.
Mhm.
And the scrum is a huge part of that. So, I think this can definitely backfire. You're going to see the scrum basically takes the opportunity of it potentially being a 50-50 ball, or let's be
Mhm.
real, it's really an 80-20 ball. Uh, of a scrum to a absolutely free kick is 100% times going to be
Right.
no change in hand. So I think it's interesting. I don't really love it. I think the scrum does a lot, not just for forwards but for backs as well. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure
What will be
it's just as good as their
interesting.
score under the post rule.
Yeah, I mean, what will be interesting though is the impact that it's going to have on fantasy because again, I think to your point that the idea of just not having scrums only impacting the tight five is not necessarily the case. I mean, you and I both know in our playing days when you had those scrum opportunities, especially on certain areas of the pitch, it opens up the field for you, right? You're compacting the forward pack into a small space, opening up
Yeah.
that space for the backs. You see sometimes really, really, really fun and cool set piece plays coming off of the scrum. Um, on top of possible, 8-man picks, things like that, that you can build off of that. From a fantasy sense, does this devalue, which already a position that is already devalued by quite a bit when it comes to our defensive set piece position? I'd imagine, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw somewhat of a decrease in points. Obviously, a lot of that comes up from the
Mm.
line out and line out mauls, but there are still, 8-man picks that we do see that gets this try assist to the defensive set piece play there.
Yeah, I'd
Interesting.
argue that the points are probably potentially going to go up. There's more lineouts. They're adding another possible route for a lineout. I don't think it's going to
Sure.
really impact it too much. I think the main fantasy wise for me is the nines. More chances to have free kicks, more chances they'll have a little go. Um, and then yeah, I think that's kind of the big one for me that I can think of.
All right. Let's move on to some quick roster moves that have happened in the build up to the opening weekend of matches. Nothing quite notable, but Chicago has signed Chris Helsenbeck, fly half from Germany. He's a guy that comes over and now I guess adds depth to that Chicago lineup, who right now includes Tim Swiel. I guess depth there. Obviously, it's Tim Swiel's job, but there you go. Chris Hilsenbeck is in that room to give a little bit of depth. And then Jonah Diedenberger, a familiar name, second row player. He's had ample experience in the MLR. He joins that second row room with Chicago too. A quick trade as well between Utah and Seattle. Utah receiving Reed Davis from Seattle, a forward kind of utility player who's played back row, who's played second row, for 2025 salary cap consideration. So we know what that means.
Something.
Something exactly. So again, I don't think any of these guys are necessarily fantasy relevant, but these are guys that you'll look out for if there inevitably is maybe injuries that do happen down the line in this MLR season. The last thing I want to talk about here before we move on to our next segment, Maddie, is the preseason results. We haven't seen much of, I guess, preseason action. Some teams were tweeting out kind of the play-by-play as it was happening. We didn't know the lineups. We didn't know really much outside of
Yeah.
when we were watching Fiji and Drua take on RFCLA, which was obviously broadcasted for everyone to watch. Since then, it's kind of tapered off here, and we haven't been able to get much information, but take this for what you will. Seattle beats Seattle Rugby 71 to nothing, and then Houston beats Chicago 61 to 19. What was funny with both of these, Maddie, was for the Houston Chicago game, Chicago was like tweeting out those those match updates like throughout it, and then you could tell as soon as the score started tapering off, it just hard stopped, and like you heard radio
Yep.
silence, and obviously the score wasn't posted by Chicago, of course the score was posted by Houston. Obviously, again, like I said, take it for what you as you will. But it was funny to kind of see that. And then Seattle did come out with a social media post after their match with the 71 to nothing
Yeah, I
drubbing
did
of
see that.
Seattle Rugby, saying, "Hey, the score doesn't matter. It's all about building the game and things like
Well,
that. A nice little tune-up game, I guess,
well,
for
I don't know
Seattle.
why they had to come out with that. It's Seattle versus a men's club team. Like,
Yeah,
what are you going to expect? It's a professional side versus an amateur side. So, yeah, I don't know why they had to do that, but hey, it is what it is. A couple things for me. I think one, Sam Tuchel, I think scored twice. That's worrisome for a lot of my preseason predictions. And I think I saw Devin Short playing, which is great to see. I think fantasy wise, we do love a little bit of Devin Short. So hopefully he's on some waiver wires throughout the season at some point.
yeah, we should see. All right, let's move on to what is my favorite segment
Oh
of the
man,
show.
a pretty weak favorite segment, Ryan.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
Hear ye, hear ye, here is Supreme Commissioner Yi with a Fantasy Ruckers League update. Well, I mean, how when the trumpets play for me and my name, your holy Supreme Commissioner, how do I not make this my favorite segment? I mean, this is 5 minutes
Okay,
all.
buddy. All right, Cusco, relax.
Yeah, Emperor's New Groove, right? I'll sit
Yep.
on my throne and let everyone kiss my feet. Either way, this update is not about me. It is about the
Mm,
people. I just want to give everyone who is participating in fantasy MLR this season an update on what is going down heading into this final week of preparation into the weekend's matches. The first match is on Saturday. Like I said at the top of the show, the website is updated. We have all of our brand new players up there. We are working out some final stuff to make sure everything is running smoothly. And we'll get that straightened out over the course of we were working through Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday we'll make sure to tighten everything up. The plan is to have waivers run Thursday morning, so make sure to get in those waiver wire pickups if you want to make any adjustments since those drafts on Wednesday evening. That deadline is 3 a.m. Eastern time, midnight Pacific time there to get those things in on Wednesday night or early Thursday morning, and then it'll process Thursday morning. So make sure to get those stuff in. If there's any changes to that, if we have to make an adjustment to that timing, we will be sure to let you know on Discord. A little note for our paid leagues. The Team Stake, the league funds manager website that we are using for our paid leagues, is up and running and set up. So make
oh,
sure, yeah, until I talk about money, is set up. Make sure you go on there, sign up, pay those dues. Your commissioner of your league should have that all set up for you. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. Either way, paid leagues are ready to go with all that. So the deadline to get those monies in is this Saturday before the matches. Lastly, Maddie, you'll be excited about this. You're pretty good at it. The weekly challenge is back.
let's go.
Again, it is a little kind of toned down version of our season long fantasy MLR game. You can go in, you have a salary of $15, a salary cap of $15. You go in, you pick a lineup of five guys consisting of front row, second row, back row as your second, a scrum half, fly half, center, and then a back three. So you fill out those five positions. Each player, depending on their ranking, is valued at different values, and you go in with that $15 pool to see if you can get that best score out of those five players you have. We keep track of the winners each and every week. We keep track of the winners season long. It's a lot of fun to get your first kind of taste and
Yep.
dabble of fantasy MLR. So that is back. Check out the website for more details on that. More information will also be coming out on our Discord as well as it pertains to the weekly challenge. All right, you ready? I guess we're about as warm as we can be, Maddie, through this preseason. But we do
Yep.
have one final
Oh
training session
man,
before we get into
I'm ready to get into the
matches
season.
this weekend.
Preseason warm up.
I'm already warm,
All right.
coach.
I know. We're about getting to that point where Maddie, we're warming up too much.
Yep, I agree.
Either way, this is our last preseason warm up of the season, and this one is about our draft results. All of our leagues, our 7 leagues that we've had this season, have all wrapped up their drafts heading into this week. They have their teams. They knew who they're going into battle with this weekend, barring any waiver wire changes that you're going to be making, which we'll talk about in just a second. But we had some interesting trends, Maddie, when it came to our draft results and seeing who went where, especially kind of knowing our rankings that we talked about on the last couple of shows. Kind of what people were thinking. Obviously, it's one thing to preach what we preach here on this show, but it's another thing to see if people are actually listening or
Well,
if
they're not.
people are kind of straying away to their own strategies here. But I guess the first thing is we got to get out of the way our top drafted player overall in all of our rankings here. Maddie, I believe we both had Devon Rousseau as our number one overall fantasy MLR player on the season. Your number one overall player is Semi Kunatani.
Yeah,
Which is
makes
not
sense.
surprising. He was drafted on average with the second pick, but right up there with him was Jason Putros. They were basically
Interesting.
hand in hand, really a coin flip between those two. So I guess that sentiment, Maddie, that we had a strong emphasis on fly half this season seemed to be true. Can you guess who number three was?
Uh, Devon Rousseau.
No, Wayne Vanderbank. So the Wayne Vanderbank
Yeah,
hype is
checks out.
still there. So our top front row player drafted was Andrew Quattrin around the 28th pick, around the middle of the fourth round. Our top second row player was Jason Dom, actually, or
Mm,
excuse me, Frank Lahore. I take
okay.
that back. Frank
I
Lahore
was
by
gonna
far.
say.
He was drafted with 13th overall, about the tail end of your third round. And then your best back row player was obviously Semi Kunatani. The best scrum half was actually Gonzalo Bertrano, who we had slated as our top scrum half, and that was around the 30th overall pick, around the tail end of round five. So still people still getting that. We had him drafted as high as number 12 in the
Wow.
TFR league, which is pretty crazy. Fly half was Jason Putros, like I mentioned. Wayne Vanderbank came in at third, like I mentioned. And then your top three back three player was who you mentioned, Matthew, Devon Rousseau, who was drafted as high as three in one of our leagues and as low as
Mm,
12, as low as 12.
interesting.
So some things there. So towards the tail end of the first round, he was picked at around the sixth, seventh pick for Devon Rousseau. Let's go into some other trends here, Maddie, which is interesting. Some value drop-offs when it comes to guys that we thought were going to go high, but went a lot later than what we thought was going to go. The first one was Jonah Moe.
That's
Jonah
criminal.
Moe was drafted as late as 63,
That's
the
criminal.
63rd overall pick in one league, as high as 14, but his average was around 25 overall. Got picked around the beginning of the fourth round for a guy that was among the top back rows when it comes to points produced. Pretty shocking.
Guys are sleeping on Jonah Mo. They'll find out. They'll find out.
I wonder how much do you think there's a little bit of worry there with the addition of Kellen Galatier, and maybe that cuts into the production a little bit.
Uh, maybe. I don't think it's warranted, but hey, you do you people. You keep sleeping on Mo.
You love Mo. You love yourself some Mo, Maddie. I know you're
Yeah.
a big fan there. So we'll see if that proves to be true. When it comes to value increases and guys that kind of got picked way above who we thought, or maybe I should say I thought, because you've been high on this guy, is Ed Fido, a
Yeah,
guy that only
don't
had
group me into you.
95.5 fantasy points last season, was actually picked around the 25th overall pick, the beginning of the
Well,
fourth round.
I
He
guess we
was
know
picked as
who the
high.
people are listening to, Ryan.
He was picked as high as 13 in our listener league, as low as 37 in one of our other leagues, but around, again, like I mentioned, around that 25th overall pick. So a lot of hype around Ed Fido.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's hard to pass up that name value as well. When people start getting to those later rounds, you're going to be one of the few off the board first.
All right. You want to hear some big disagreements and discrepancies when it
Sure.
comes to
Let's do
people?
it.
There's three guys that got picked in probably the most drastic varying positions in all of the drafts that we were having. Okay. Our first one is Sam Caird. Okay. Drafted as low as 105, as high as 31, making it an average of the 69th pick towards the tail end of the ninth round. But talk about just a discrepancy in terms of people thinking that Sam Caird is going to do good stuff to maybe
Yeah.
I'll take a flyer here at the tail end of my draft.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, it's not a surprise that both these guys are maybe a little less known. They are new to the MLR. Um, and yeah, I'm not surprised that it is this way. People have varying different outlooks on the new guys that come into MLR, and we've seen differing varies of success as well in the MLR.
The other guy you're mentioning is Brad Wilkin, who again, as well, is a new guy to the MLR, taken as high as 22, went undrafted in three leagues. So
Yeah,
he's
keep
sitting on
sleeping on him.
he's
Not in
sitting
our
free
leagues, he didn't go
in some
undrafted.
people's waiver wire. No, we were able to snag him with the 71st overall pick. Feeling pretty good about that. So he's another guy, again, averaging around that 57th pick, but shocking that in three leagues he's sitting on some people's waiver wire, which maybe we'll get into a little bit. I think the biggest name that we need to talk about that is familiar and doesn't have that excuse of not being in the league and people being maybe unfamiliar with the name is Jamison Fa'anana Schultz. He's the guy that has a big discrepancy, drafted as high as sixth overall pick in the TFR league,
Wow.
drafted as low as 81, undrafted in three leagues,
I'm
and
not
he's sitting there.
surprised. I
Is that
pretty
so?
much I pretty much forgot about him until he was drafted in our league.
Is there a reason? Are you? I guess you're. Are
I
you?
mean, I don't like the guy. He punched Captain Canada a few years
That's
back.
true.
That's kind of got me all angry and not really loving him. But no, I just think that there's so much back row talent this year.
Hmm.
And like Jama has been average fantasy wise, not great and amazing like he was 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, and you just kind of lose him to the new and shiny, I think. But those who did get him, I think, are going to be satisfied with the results
Yeah.
as long as
So
you
I
didn't
guess we'll
draft him
see.
sixth, because that's a waste.
Yeah, that was pretty shocking to see that first round pick in our 8 team league in our TFR league. But lo and behold, hey, there he is, and we'll see how that pans out. We've seen crazier. We've definitely seen
Yep,
crazier here in
it's true.
fantasy MLR. Lastly, can you guess the player that had the biggest agreement that everyone was like, you know
Brian, we
what? Yeah,
already
this
went
guy's.
over this. You said everybody had consensus on Jason Potros.
Yeah, that's true.
You said that
Everyone.
right after Kunatani. You said Potros was the guy that everybody said you got to draft him early.
Yeah, you do. It's true. It is true. So Jason
Kind of
Putros,
interesting.
he
I don't think was that was. Do you remember if that was the way last year? Did we have a 10 being the most consensus, or was
I
that Joe Mano that was the most consensus and he fooled everybody?
Yeah, I think that was the case last year. I believe the top drafted fly half last year was on average
Interesting.
Joel Hodgson, and he was the tail end of the first round. We saw a whole bunch of fly halves going in the first round in a whole bunch of leagues. So
Yeah.
interesting to see with that. Yeah, Jason Putros, he was drafted fifth in our TFR league, and then 2, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1 overall. So Semi Kuntani's right up there. He was like one or two, except for one league where he's drafted sixth, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, Either way, Semi Kunitani, Jason Potros, the two guys that I think people, again, top ADP players and guys that were most confident in terms of discrepancy. All right. We'll have this is typically in our show where we'll have our quick tap recap where we break down all of the matches and go over kind of our top players, but obviously with no matches as of yet in week zero, we'll move right on to some guys that you may need to keep an eye on here as we look ahead to that first week of play to stash on your bench.
Waiver wire breakdown.
Whoa. That's a new one.
We haven't heard that one yet, Maddie. Waiver wire breakdown, the TFR waiver wire breakdown. This is our segment where we are going to give you some options at each and every position. If you're in need of some guys, this is where you're going to find them, especially in this week zero when we head into week one, where maybe you made a little bit of a mistake towards the tail end of your draft, or maybe you're regretting passing on someone and there's someone available that can fill a spot. There's the option. Or and I think the first time in Major League Rugby history, we have a bye in the very, very first week of the season. So if you have any Utah
Yep.
Warriors guys, if you have Joel Hodgson, you're probably going to need to look for a fly half that is going to help you out here. So this is the segment you're going to want to listen to. Maddie, let's start off with the waiver wire breakdown for our front row player. Who is someone that you think that you can have on the tail end of your bench that maybe went overlooked in drafts that people, if they do want to get some reassurance at the front row position, could pick up?
Yeah, I think for me, I think a guy like Hugh Roach, who's probably gone undrafted in most, if not all leagues, uh, is a guy that I'm looking at, right? Like they're going against Seattle Seawolves. I think that's an okay matchup. Seattle Seawolves are always good defensively, but I think Hugh Roach, to me, is a guy that can be a guy you're going to hold all year because of his performances.
Okay. For me, I'm going with Ben Sugars. This is a guy
Mm.
that has is only owned in 28% of our leagues. So a majority of
Wow.
our leagues actually have Ben Sugars sitting on the waiver wire. Um, what's interesting, Maddie, is a lot of people stuck with Ben Strang. A lot of people, there's actually 57% of leagues that have Ben Strang
Wow.
in their leagues, so or that have them rostered. So clearly the sentiment what most people are thinking is that it is Ben Strang's job to lose, but we kind of touched on it earlier in the preseason. We saw Ben Sugars play in that Fiji and Drua game. He looked to be a guy that was pretty solid, scored a try in that one. Again, I think it still is up in the air. It's not a definitive answer of it is Ben Strang's job or it is Ben Sugars' job, but especially if you're the Ben Strang owner, like I would not mind having Ben Sugars on the tail end of my bench just to see how that plays out at the beginning of this week one.
Yeah, you're definitely going to. This is kind of the week as we look at waiver wire is going to be where you kind of want to see who's starting, and you want to have those guys in your bench so you don't have to fight for them. You don't have to fight for them when you're trying to pick up guys. So get ahead of those matchups, Ryan, like you're saying.
Yeah. And for those of you who are brand new to fantasy MLR, like you're gonna join in on the fun of the excitement that is last minute lineup releases where
Mm,
you get blindsided by something that you didn't think was going to happen. You had someone slot in your starting lineup that is no longer playing or appearing. Yeah, to Matthew's point, get ahead of it. We did that front row handcuff approach. We don't really know the situation between Andrew Quattrin and Connell McInerney. So we went with both players in our TFR league just to make sure to see who we're going to get. And hey, if Ben Strang or Ben Sugars looks to be that guy come out the gate in week one, like there you go. You can drop one of the options. You have an open roster spot for next week's waiver wire. It's just that you may want to, like you said, Matt, get ahead of it before there is that rush to get into that this coming week. And that's kind of what this whole waiver wire is about: is getting those waivers in if you have the roster space and you're okay moving on from some guys, so that you're not competing with a whole slew of other people when they put in their waiver wire claims. All right,
yeah.
let's go to the second row position. Maddie, who do you think is an option at the second row if maybe you have a Frank Lahore, or if you don't like the second row option that you maybe have right now?
Yeah, to me, I got two
It's a
guys. I
tough
got
one.
Mumson. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
tough one, but I got Johan Mumson, and I have got oh, I just had him. Oh, Gavin Thornbury.
Okay.
Um, I mean, look, like I think you're kind of just seeing what you got there at the second row. I personally wouldn't even take a stab unless there's a no-brainer at a second row position. There's no need to waste a spot that obviously you have a guy who you spent draft capital on, so you value. Um, I don't even know if it's worth it, but if I did need one, yeah, Johan Mumson, I think, or Gavin Thornbury, both are good pickups.
I got two options here. If you're in need of a streamer, Rhino Herbst is available in more than 50% of leagues. If you have Frank Lahore, Rhino is a guy that has produced adequate points at the second row position. So you can maybe slot him in replacement for the 1 week, and you're not too mad about dropping him the week afterwards when maybe your more marquee guy comes back. The guy that I would choose for a ceiling, a guy that's available in 85% of leagues, is Rick Rose of the Miami Sharks. First overall draft pick. He went drafted in our TFR league. He's available in essentially every single other league. Again, there was a lot of hype going into him last year with him, and he didn't really pan out. Only 64.6 fantasy points. But again, a first overall pick in MLR, like there's pedigree there, and there's a reason why he was chosen. With that, there may be some space there for him to kind of go off and really start to
Yeah,
establish himself.
I like it.
All right, let's move on to the back row position. Maddie, who you got?
This is also a bit of a tough one, but for me, I'm going with that angle of checking out kind of starting lineups and having them on my bench for if I want to start them this week or for the future. I got a guy like Jed Melvin. I want to see badly kind of what New England Free Jacks are going to roll out with. If Melvin's part of that lineup, you know that he's going to be making an impact. And just a guy that I want to have on my bench because of the performance that he had in 4 weeks last year.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Now, in terms of the New England back row players, obviously Vian Conradi was the consensus guy that was drafted the most. He's owned in every single league, but obviously there's a whole bunch of other ones. Yero Gomez Vara is now in that mix. You got again Jed Melvin in there. Who am I missing in there? Anyways, there a guy. So if you're one of these New England back row owners, like are you more keen and more emphasizing the fact that you want to have Jed Melvin just in case? Again, to your point, he's only owned in 28% of leagues right now.
I mean, personally, I think, yeah, you could pick him up for that reason for sure. I think if you're worried about kind of playing time in that back row room, you might as well look elsewhere and look at another team if you need a cover for a New England Free Jack back rower. But yeah, I think to me, Jed Melvin has shown the most upside, and I think in my mind is the most likely to start
Right now, my
with Vian
money
Conradi.
Yeah, my money right now is a starting lineup of Jed Melvin, Vian Conradi, and then I would be most worried if I had, let's say, a Yero Gomez Vara. Like I think
Yeah.
that will be the rotating position. Like I think that you might see a Joe Johnson in there, Ethan Fryer, kind of floating around in that area. So yeah, I guess we should see. Jed Melvin, I think, is definitely one that I would want to have on my roster heading into this weekend for sure. For me, I got Ben Houston as my back row waiver wire pickup, owned in again only 30% of leagues. So 70% out there still have this guy available sitting on your waiver wire. He looks to be the starting eight for this Los Angeles side. And if we are expecting what this team is going to do with how they're going to play, the speed they're going to play, that really matches up with how you can produce fantasy MLR points. It does feel like that Ben Houston could be a slam dunk pick, right? Like, I mean, you got Ed Timpson there, Tim Anstey, Matt Heaton, but it has been Houston at that eight position, which I think has a lot of value heading into the season. That eight spot for
Yeah.
LA, I think is going to be good.
Yeah, but I think it'll matter where kind of Kunatani plays out, right? So like, is Kunatani playing at eight? Is he on the flanker position? We'll see. Um, yeah, I think that's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the scrum half position. Talk about interesting ones. This is one that's definitely interesting in terms of what is available out there. I think nines went a lot higher in drafts than I thought was going to happen. But I mean, there are some guys that are interesting that are still available in a lot of leagues. I would check your waiver wires. If you're looking at a guy that could start for you all season long, Carlo Denishan is owned in less than 50% of leagues. And Matt, I don't know if this is your guy that you mentioned that you wanted to mention,
Yep.
but the fact that he's not owned in a handful of leagues here, less than half, for what is the starting nine for that Anthem squad that looks to be very improved, he might be one that you're going with. Like that could be a long-term solution for you. The other guy that I have in mind is Ruben DeHaas, just because he came from the Cheetahs. The likelihood that he's coming here to MLR to sit on the bench is not likely. He's only owned in 14% of leagues. So again, 85% of leagues don't have Ruben DeHaas rostered. I would slot it as Carlo Denishan first, and then if Ruben DeHaas is there, take a flyer on him.
Yeah, I like that. I think Connor Buckley's another one that I was going to point out as well. Um, yeah, Connor Buckley, but yeah, Ruben DeHaas, I think is interesting just because you think he's going to start, but we still need to find out. But if he's not in a roster, definitely would not hurt to have him there. He could be the starter all year for Nola. Um, and yeah, that's
But
I think Connor Buckley for me was the only other guy. There's
like
potential
this
Ethan McVay takes that spot too, but again, this is one of those like second row. I wouldn't really unless you have to. I wouldn't really be panicking too much to have to get one of these guys off the scrum half waiver wire.
What's nice about this week zero waiver wire, though, is the fact that you're going to get your answer more or less come the weekend, right? Like
Yeah,
you'll find out, right? Like take the flyer on Ruben Haas now, right? If you have the roster spot, take it now because he could be a long-term option for you. You find out it's Luke Campbell, you know what I mean, starting for the most time on the weekend. Okay, there you go. Dust your hands. Ruben Haas is on the waiver wire. You can drop him the next week, right? But you're probably kicking yourself more if it's the other way around, where Ruben Haas ends up being the starter. He rolls into the waiver wire next week, and everyone's trying to jump the gun on Ruben Haas. So this is
yeah, but what
the
about the other way around? You drop a guy for Ruben DeHaas, and that guy starts going off and Ruben DeHaas does it. It kind of works both ways. Like this,
it
it
does, and
makes
I
it
guess this
it makes it difficult because like you drafted the guys you drafted for a reason. Unless there is a standout to me, I don't think the waiver wire needs to be or if you have a lot of concern with a couple guys, then I don't think the waiver wire is really as important in week zero. I think in week zero, it's going to be a lot of, oh crap, this guy who I drafted high isn't even starting this weekend. I got to pick up somebody else. It's going to be a lot of that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, going on to the fly half position, Matt, who do you have as a potential option here for Joel Hodgson owners that will not have the one of the most highly drafted fly halves playing this weekend?
Yeah, there's not much. I think a really interesting one for me is Eddie Fouché. I think I
Hmm.
would be
Hmm.
interested to see where he is in this lineup. I think he starts, but we'll have to see. Another really interesting dynamic is the Nola Gold 10 room. I think Luke Hardy is going to start. But man, if you're really in a squeeze and you see that Reese Botha or potentially Dorian Jones are going to start at fly half, and you really don't have any other option, you might as well pick one of them up and just hope for the best.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent on hopping on the Eddie Fouché. Especially, I mean, what do you have to lose, right? If you don't have Joel Hodgson, pick him up in the waiver wire, see what you have, and go from there. What's interesting though is what I think another option is what are we going to see with the Miami Sharks. And they've listed obviously the sentiment here on this show and the sentiment on a lot of people's minds heading into this draft was the fact that Santiago Videla was going to be that guy. But I believe on their announcement and release of a roster or the league announcement of the roster, they have Santiago Videla listed as a center. So,
Mm,
I mean, with that listed like that, they have Martin Elias and Shane O'Leary listed as their fly halves. Those are guys like Shane O'Leary is owned literally in no leagues.
yeah, don't draft Shane O'Leary.
Martin Elias is owned in just 42% of leagues. So if he's available, like
Draft Martin Elias.
take a flyer and see what you can get out of him if in fact Santiago Videla will not be playing fly half this season. You never know. Again, you have to take it with a grain of salt with those graphics, and sometimes it's mind games, but I mean it is there for a reason, and you gotta at least keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and also MLR just reposted, I think, the Houston SaberCats graphic because they put Drew Wild at 10. But like, anyways, you never know. But yeah, I think Martin Elias is a good look, anyways, especially if you're kind of worried about that. Definitely do not go into the waiver wire for Shane O'Leary. There is absolutely no need.
So Eddie Fouché or Martin Elias are kind of the two options if you are the Joel Hodgson owner, is what I'm sounding out here. Moving on to the center position, Maddie. There seems to be a lot of center options here that you can kind of go with in terms of streamers. So
Deep.
if you have a Paul Asike, if you have any of these Utah centers that you may need, who do you kind of go with here?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Jack Reeves and Mika Kruse. Those Mika Kruse was one that I'm surprised he wasn't going getting drafted more often, and he's
Hmm.
still the guy that is probably surprising. I mean, he's got ample opportunity in Seattle. We've seen what he does at Utah. Now put him on an even better team and even more structured offense, and let's see how he goes. And 13s have done historically. We've seen them do very well in this offense. So I'm excited for Mika Kruse. I think he's kind of one of those guys where you're potentially looking at like, oh, this guy might be better than a guy that I drafted.
Yeah, a few options I have on my list. The one that I wanted to actually draft is a late end, but it seemed like there was a lot of hype that came through him. I mean, getting drafted as high as 27 in one of our leagues. It's funny because I believe Rugby Morning, John Fitzpatrick is the guy that drafted in both the TFR League and Listener League. The only two leagues that this player is available in or not
Mm,
available in is Nick Chan. Nick Chan of RFC LA. There seems to be, now this is a lot of speculation. There seems to be a lot of hype around him, them liking Nick Chan. And again, I want as many assets as I can of this RFC LA squad that with on paper, I know this has bit me in the bum before, but with on paper with how they look, Nick Chan might be a guy to look at. Ethan Grayson is another option that I do like. He's only drafted in one league, 14% owned. That means available in basically every other league except for a TFR league. There's buzz around Ethan Grayson possibly stepping in there at that fly half position. Could be a very big option at that center position. I know they added to Vito Petty, but just to see how that Ethan Grayson kind of plays out because he does have the pedigree. I mean, he's played with the Falcons overseas, right? The Falcons, is that correct?
yep.
And he has that pedigree, like I mentioned. And then lastly, Eric Storty, first overall pick with the Anthem, American player. They said they're going to have an emphasis of playing American players. Eric Storty. He could be electric this season. Who knows? It could be a Junior Gaffa type situation. I know they're on the same team,
There we go, Junior
but
Gaffa.
we'll see. We'll see there. But Eric Storty is a guy that if you do have the space, maybe stash on the tail end of your bench. All right, lastly here, back three players. Anyone that sticks out to you, Maddie, that is available that you could possibly stream if you have maybe a Joe Mano or a any of those other back three guys from Utah.
Yeah. So you can't get Jordan Trainer because he would be a good pickup. But Villamoni Karoy on the Nola Gold, I think he's a pretty good pickup going up against the Anthem. I cannot be until it changes. Playing against the Anthem is still going to continue to be a boost, at least until week 1 of the season.
Mhm. It was actually very surprising, Maddie, to me on how undrafted some of these NOLA back three assets went. Like Xavier Mignot only got drafted in 42% of leagues. Villamone Karoy only got drafted in 28% of leagues. I think even Isaac Tutamaki like got drafted in less than 50%. So interesting to see kind of how that all
Sleeping.
played out. Because you've been pretty high on them, and we'll see whether or not they're a big name that comes up in waiver wire segments in the future. But for me, I wanted to put down Rory Van Voot. Rory Van Voot is only owned in 28% of leagues. For now, it seems like it is his job to lose. Logan Isaacs did not really appear much in preseason. Reese McDonald is going to be out until, at least March, I think is what we're hearing it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're the Reese McDonald owner. I know there are a lot of them that was a surprise that a lot of people still drafted Reese McDonald quite high, actually. I mean, it went eighth in the TFR league, went 16th in one of the other leagues, as high as four in some leagues. So obviously they're willing to bite that bullet of missing him for 4, 5, 6 weeks, because you know what you're going to get in the tail end. But that's still 6 weeks of Rory Van Voot playing in that spot. So that's who I got in that one. Last, as we kind of quickly here, defensive set piece, Maddie. Out of the ones that are most likely available, is there any streamers that you like this week if you do, let's say, have Utah or want to
Oh,
maybe play a defense that is better than maybe what you have as an option?
yeah, like I said, I think Nola Gold
Hmm.
going against the Anthem is always a good play, and they might be good for the rest of the season because I think their set piece is going to benefit from their team quality.
Yeah. Nola Gold right now only owned in 30% of leagues. So 70% have him at there. I think that's a fantastic streaming option. All right, Maddie, let's get into our very first breakdown of games here this upcoming year for week one.
Let's do it.
Rucking Rundown.
Oh, groovy.
This is the TFR Rucking Rundown. We run down through all of the matches of the week, and we are starting here in week one. Bye. Utah Warriors don't have a match. Kind of funny that you open up the season. You're not even on the docket, but we do still have five other games starting on Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern time between the Miami Sharks and Old Glory DC. This one should be an interesting one. Again, we've said here on the show how I guess bearish we are on Old Glory DC just because of the lack of changes that they made this offseason. The Miami Sharks have brought in a handful of new South American guys coming in. This one should be interesting, Maddie. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, it should be good. I'm really looking forward to actually seeing what this Miami Sharks-esque, Dallas Jackals-esque team looks like. They got a lot of reinforcements there. Ogre DC, I kind of know what I'm getting with them just because of how many returnees, so I'm more excited on the Miami side. Um, yeah, I like Miami here. I like
You like
Miami here.
Miami. All right.
Yeah.
Maddie's going Miami. And it's just like how we did last year, going to keep score on how many picks we get right. I'm going to go with Miami as well. No
Cheater.
one really stands out to me in terms of starts here. But I guess we'll
Uh,
see as those lineups come out. Obviously, you're going to get your marquee guys
yeah.
coming in, but we shall see. All right, moving on to 7 p.m. Eastern time. NOLA is hosting Anthem Rugby Carolina. Again, Matt, I'll let you go first because you've been high on this NOLA team all off
No,
season long.
I think there's so much to see with this and so much to see in terms of lineup, so much to see in terms of quality, what they're going to look like, the type of rugby that they're going to play. They got new coaches, new players. I'm really looking forward to seeing this side run. I'm really looking forward to see what type of lineup they put out there. But I think it's going to be really athletic, exciting rugby. Yeah, I'm backing Nola Gold here.
You're back in NOLA Gold. All right. I think I'm going to have to
Yeah,
go NOLA as well. I think I'm going to keep on the sentiment that until Anthem proves me wrong, I don't think I can pick them, but they will
yeah.
get a win. They will get their first franchise win. There'll be a week where we go with it, but this I don't think is the week. There's just so many. This NOLA team is really exciting, Maddie, and I'm
Watch
starting to
out for
catch on what you've
Tatamaki.
been dropping. Yeah, honestly, I think your NOLA shares, like, is that what you're going with, Maddie, this week? Like in terms of start your NOLA players, like you're going with that until it's proven
Yeah,
wrong.
I would definitely start my Nolan players.
All right, moving on to that third match of Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Houston hosting Chicago. This is an interesting one. Obviously, Chicago looks pretty revamped. Moved on from Billy Meeks. Have a new coaching staff up front, obviously, and then the Houston SaberCats, obviously coming off of a stellar regular season last year, falling short against the rest in peace Dallas Jackals. Houston probably
You
looking to
killed
get
them.
on the right foot here. But this one should be interesting. Obviously, we know how Houston's going to play with that forward centric type style. I think the big question here is how Chicago is going to combat that and how they'll look on their end.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I'm more, again, like you said, I'm more interested in Chicago here. I want to see what they come out with. I want to see kind of what their offense looks like. Yeah, I'm specifically interested in kind of how they incorporate their back three a bit more and how Tim Sewell works in that offense. But to me, the Houston SaberCats are the Houston SaberCats for a reason. They went undefeated basically last year until it mattered. And right now, this is the least amount of mattering. That means Houston's going to take the win here.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Houston's going on here, so we're all 3 for 3 here, Maddie. But I will say, don't be surprised if Tim Sewell has a big points match this one because I'm just thinking with that stout defense from the Houston SaberCats, Chicago is going to want to take points when they can get points. And we know how Tim Sewell is from that kicking tee. I wouldn't be surprised if that guy slotted in a whole bunch of them
Yeah.
to rack up a bunch of points there for the Chicago Hounds. But I still do think Houston comes up on top at the end. All right, second last match of the weekend, the last of Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. This is probably the match of the week. I think people are most excited for. RFC Los Angeles taking on the New England Free Jacks at home. The defending champs are taking on the team that probably has the most hype around them. Obviously, coming off of the Fiji and Drua game, being on front and center with all eyes on them, and having a good showing at that, with the addition of all those signings that they have, taking on, like I said, the 2024 Shield champions. Maddie, I think this one's going to be, if all indications say how they're supposed to go, is going to be a fun match to watch.
Yeah, I think, I actually think that it might be a little bit of a defensive battle. New England Free Jacks, historically really good defense. Los Angeles, I think we're going to see their defense really shine here. They looked pretty decent in that preseason match at times in terms of line speed. So I think it's going to be a weird defensive battle that's going to open up in the second half. I got LA winning this one. New England Free Jacks historically have had slow starts. But yeah, I just think LA is just going to keep carrying this momentum into the first win of the season.
And Maddie, you know that I am the in-house LA guy now. I have taken on that crown.
And
But I think I'm going to go New England here.
okay, so
Um,
you're not an LA guy at all. You're not an
I
LA
want,
guy at all. I don't know how you can be an LA guy and then
I don't
want
want,
them to lose in the first game of the season.
I don't want them to
I'm going to
lose.
tell Co next time Co's on the show. I'm going to tell him that you said you're an LA guy, but then pick them to lose.
I think it's going to take some time for this Los Angeles teams to click. And I know we've seen historically
Okay.
that this New England Free Jacks team takes a little bit of time, but again, this is the defending champions. Um,
Well, they
Away
lost
from home.
a lot of guys.
I know. I know. My heart says LA, my mind says New England. And I want to
We're a
be
big
different
fan.
than you and put something
Big
on here. So
fan.
we'll see.
Big fan.
We'll see. So I'll go New England here. You're making me want to switch that. You really are making me want to
Big
switch that.
fan.
Okay. Anyways, I'm loving that match. It should be really exciting. It's gonna be fun to see kind of how LA comes up there. And yeah, they end up winning. I'd love to be proven wrong here. San Diego now, Seattle Seawolves
Hey, where is this game?
taking on each other Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern time in San Diego. Um,
Nice.
this one should be fun too. I would say the undercard for the LA New England game. This one's gonna be fun too. Obviously, the Seattle Seawolves coming off of a MLR Shield final appearance. The Legion making the Shield not too long ago. You got the return of Richard Judd. The Seawolves are now directed by a brand new fly half tandem in Iona and Fuche. No more Mac Mason. A lot of storylines heading into this one. So, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, for San Diego, it's kind of their start of an era behind or no longer behind their fearless vet Ma'ananu. So it'll be interesting to see. Really interesting to see this one. Yeah, it's in San Diego, not in Seattle. They don't have to weather the storm. I think I'm gonna go San Diego here.
Yeah, I'm going San Diego too. I think away from home. I'm very excited to see a Richard Judd, Connor Tupai tandem here, kind of directing this offense. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I think there is going to be some growing pains in trying to figure out what food chain Iona does. San Diego seems to have a team that is mostly back, and they've added some pretty stud pieces at that front end too. Brad Wilkin, Jed Holloway. That should definitely be interesting. So see, it worked out, right? I had to pick the different one than you, or we would have been all the same, and that's no fun. So
Whatever,
again,
man. You're a
we
fake
both
fan.
we got both Miami, we both got NOLA, both got Houston. I got New England, you got LA. We both have San Diego. Our final predictions here in this segment to tee us up for the rest of
Oh
the year.
man.
Who are you predicting on the record is going to win the 2025 MLR Shield?
All right. I'm gonna go Nola Gold.
Nola Gold, you're doing it again, huh? You're doing
Yeah, let's
it
do it.
again. That would be exciting
Let's
to
do
see.
it.
I would love to see the thing. I'm gonna go with LA here. So I think they're gonna figure it out and
Fake fan.
they're gonna get it sorted. Tough opening matchup, but I think they'll learn a lot from that and then they'll carry that momentum through the rest of the season. Maddie, biggest surprise this season. Who do you think is gonna be the team that surprises you the most and maybe overachieves than what we are expecting them to?
I think Miami Sharks. I think Miami
Okay.
Sharks are going to be a sneaky, really good team, um, and I think they're going to kind of, yeah, they're gonna add a lot to this Eastern Conference that stinks.
Okay. I'm going to go with Anthem Rugby Carolina. I think
All right,
Anthem
well,
Rugby
that's upsetting.
Carolina is going to get their first win this season. And I think they are
That
going to
is
do a
at
lot better than.
expectations, Ryan. They're
No,
not
no, no.
blowing
I said
one win
they
out of the
will,
water. Is
they
not
will,
blowing it out of the water.
they will at least get their first win. And I think they'll do a lot better
Okay,
and,
thanks for
and, and
setting the
go through
bar a
there.
lot higher.
Well, that's the bar. The bar is the bar.
You
I
got to
can't
say
change it.
they're
I
gonna
think.
blow the expectation out of the water. That means you want them to get. You think that they're gonna get 4 wins, 5 wins,
I think they
seven
can get.
wins.
I think that not seven. I think they can get. I think they can get 3.5 wins. All right, moving on to biggest flop. Who do you think is going to be the biggest underachiever this season?
Can I hedge my winner pick?
No, that you can't
No,
do
I
that. No,
can't do
that's
that. Can't do that. I'm gonna put San Diego Legion.
really.
Yeah, I think they're caught in this area of mediocrity around a really good Western Conference and a lot of really good teams. So I think we see them as this team that's supposed to do well. I don't know if they're going to meet those expectations.
I want to go Old Glory DC here, but I think to my point, the bar is set pretty low there. So for them to be lower than that, I think they would have to go like winless throughout this year, maybe 1 or 2 wins.
Well,
I'm gonna go the New England Free Jacks. I
oh,
think a
okay.
lot of pieces have departed there. And they also are running off. I mean, it's hard to three-peat. We saw what happened over the past weekend, how Vandy's feeling through that. It's hard to do that again. And I think that they have their targets on their back. Obviously, been a staple of this league for a long time, but I think a lot of teams have gone in a lot better, and it's going to make their season a lot more difficult. So New England is my biggest underachiever this weekend. So or excuse me, this year. But winners though, Matthew, you got NOLA, we got LA. So if all indications point, we should have a brand new 2025 MLR Shield champion, knowing how
We'll
accurate
see.
our predictions are.
Yep,
All right.
that's for sure.
Last segment of the show, let's chat a little
Whew.
bit about some monies.
Show's got an endless amount of
TFR
segments.
Betting Challenge.
We have a lot to talk to the people about, Maddie, and they love to hear our picks for the TFR Betting Challenge,
Well,
brought to you by Betstamp. Betstamp betting made easy. If you want to get in on the action and support the show, you can click the link down below where we have a curated page for you that it was helped in partnership with Betstamp to show you all the sports books that are available in your area to get some great first time user bets at all of those sports books that are available to you. So check that link down below and you can get in on the MLR betting action as they start this week. Now, I will say, none of the lines at the time of the recording of this podcast have been out. I checked all the
what the
sports
heck?
books that are
What are we
available in
supposed to
my
do?
area that are out there. So we're going to keep an eye out. Like, of course, those are going to come out. Me and Vandy are going to go head to head. We decided on $50 for our MLR picks. We'll see who can win the most amount of money in this 2025 MLR Shield. I will say, though, there is other rugby going on, which is what we're going to talk about here, Maddie. Vandy, still continuing to make some money when it comes to rugby betting. He goes with the 6.5 point favorite Ireland pick over Scotland. That obviously smashed the hit. I went with the
Yep.
parlay of the 6.5 points that
Uh-oh.
was given to
You and
Ireland,
your parlays.
plus a money line France win. And on a last minute try, I end up getting that pick busted before I even have a chance in the last one. I was feeling good when France scored that try to take the lead, and then was feeling not so good about 2 or 3 minutes later. So either way, we got Six Nations that are coming up this weekend, Maddie. We also have your favorite league that I think you like to, and I think I quote what you said last week that you are going to be a bank when it comes to
Be on a heater.
super rugby betting this one. So what do you want to start with? You want to start with Six Nations or Super
Let's
Rugby?
start with Six Nations. This one's the easiest one.
All right. So Six Nations, we got Ireland taking on Wales on Saturday, Scotland taking on England on Saturday as well, and then on Sunday, France versus Italy. Matt, we'll start with Ireland, Wales. Who do you
No, I
think?
don't. This is in Ireland. It's like up by 20 something. If you want an easy one, you just hit the Ireland spread. Next.
23 and a half.
Yeah, you hit that spread. Next.
Okay. So what do you think is the line for England, Scotland?
12.
8.5. England is favored.
Yeah, I would take that.
You take England, 8.5. All right.
Yeah,
France at Italy. What do you think the line is for that?
20.
Around that, 18 and a half. 18 and a half for France.
Yeah, I'd also take France. Wow. It's
So
gonna be
you,
a bunch
you,
of
you like the favorites in all of them, huh?
get
All
the
right.
favorites, all of them.
All right. Get the favorites. All right, let's move on to then what you're most happy about, the start of Super Rugby. We got 5 matches happening this weekend, starting on Friday. Hurricanes at Crusaders. Your Hurricanes taking on the Crusaders.
I'll
What do you
stay
think the
away from
line is
this
here?
bad boy. Stay
What do you
away
think the
from
line
this
is?
one. It's got to be what, like 7?
Crusaders are only 2.5 favorites.
Only 2.5 favorites. Oof. Oof. Yeah, I don't know. I'd stay away from this one. But if I were to pick one, I would go Hurricanes. But that's just me.
Hurricane. That's the fandom ship making up that 2.5 points, isn't
Yep.
it? All right.
Yep.
Highlanders at Waratahs. What do you think the line is here?
What Highlanders by now? Wartahs by what? 5?
6.5. Pretty good, Maddie. Minus 6.5.
Yep.
Waratahs are favored.
Yeah, I'm staying away from this one. I'm assuming
Okay.
what
All
they're in.
right.
Yeah, they're in the zoo. I'm staying away from that one.
All right. Super Rugby giving you some
Maybe
hard.
not.
You seem more locked in on getting heaters in Six Nations. All right. On to the last game on Friday.
Oh, because that
Brumbies
one was
at
so easy.
Brumbies at Fiji and Drua. What's the line here?
Well, Brumbies. I forget how they did last year. Brumbies, what, favored by 2?
Favored by 3.5. Maddie, you're pretty good at this.
Yeah,
What do you
pick
think?
Drua. Go Drua.
Really?
Yeah, Drua with a big
So,
shock round one win.
so if I am extrapolating my data properly, that means that RFCLA could beat the Brumbies.
That's false extrapolation. So no.
All right, moving on to Saturday. My Waikato Chiefs taking on the Auckland Blues. What's the line here, Maddie?
Oh, what? Like Blues are favored by 5? No, 3.
You're close on the first one. Stick with your gut. Minus 5.5. Blues are favored.
Yeah, I'll go Chiefs there. I like the Chiefs. They'll cover that 5.
All right, all right. And then last one here, Moana Pacifica at Western Force. Um, what's the line here?
Western Force favored by 7.
8.5. Maddie, you're not too bad. What do you think
Told
there?
you. I think you gotta go to Force. But yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know. I could see Moana Pacifica pulling a cheeky one out.
Okay, so the ones you're most confident in seems to be
The
a
Six
Fiji and
Nation
Drew.
ones, I'm the most confident on this out of all of them.
All right,
But
but from
I am
Super
confident
Rugby
in Drua beating the Brumbies.
and
And
Chiefs
then
covering 5.5.
yes.
Okay. All right. Well, there is your TFR betting challenge. We'll have the picks coming up later this week. And again, if you want to get in on the action, click that link down below for first user bets that are available in your area at sportsbooks available in your area. Thank you to Betstamp for partnering with us and supporting the show. And thank you for clicking that link and possibly getting some free monies and supporting our show here. All right, Maddie, well, we got our very first week coming up this weekend. Good luck to everyone out there. Again, keep an eye out on the Discord channel in terms of updates that are coming down the line. But hey, the MLR is here, baby, and we're excited for it, which means Fantasy MLR is kicking off, and it's going to be a fun time. Matt, any more notes you have for the people?
Nope, just good luck, Godspeed, and enjoy.
All right, Godspeed and enjoy. The great words from the Matthew Yee. For Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I'm Ryan Yee, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
I'm getting real low, big guy.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.